Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome back to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are going to continue our quarterly review. We're still trying to get caught up, looking at 2023. Let's take a look at fourth quarter 2023. Now, fourth quarter historically in warships is a pretty good one, right? The holiday events, the holiday giveaways, all the free stuff that comes out in September, December, right? The Santa crates, those are historically big draws for players back into the fold, and certainly is a big cash cow for World of Warships. So we'll do what we always do. We'll take a quick look at the patch notes for the various patches in this quarter, so you can kind of refresh your memory what was going on and why players might have logged in or might not have logged in, as the case may be. And then we'll take a look at the population numbers. I'm going to close with something a little different today. I was recently having a conversation on Twitch with my stream and ended up leading into a conversation about the population, the numbers, the declines we've been seeing. And I'm gonna just kind of throw that in here. I'm gonna pen that to the end of this video, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about it. It's about an 8-minute clip. We just kind of talk about things for a bit, but let's get into this. October of 2023, update 12.9. Pretty small patch, actually. Not a ton of things in this one. Probably the biggest thing was the early access to the Japanese battle cruisers, starting that little branch that branches off at Tier 8, starting with Yumahari. I actually kind of like these ships. They're kind of fun. The little spotter plane gimmick that they get, the overall, the speed of the ships, the kind of the maneuverability, they're actually not bad boats. They added this goofy collection that came with a reward camo for Yumahari, the kind of the lead ship of that branch, and it's gorgeous, right? It's got this beautiful cherry blossom sunset kind of theme. It's stunning. The art guys in this game continue to absolutely crush everything they do. It's so amazing. A rather infamous patch, in my opinion, because they added one of the worst designed ships in all of World of Warships, and that's, of course, Tier 10 German submarine U-4501, which is capable, I believe it's 38 knots submerged, which is utterly and completely stupid. Now, I recently discovered something that I had not realized, right? That 4501's surface speed is quite slow. She's only like 21 knots on the surface. And that speed also applies at periscope depth. She can only make that stupid crazy speed once she goes down to, 30 or 60 meters, depending on, like a travel depth, for lack of a better way to put it, not periscope depth. But still, hunting one of these things as a destroyer is an exercise in pain and frustration, because depending on the destroyer you're driving, he might be faster than you. The submarine, the World War II era submarine, might be faster than you. Think about that for a minute. 38 knots is like nuclear submarine speed or better, right? In fact, I don't even think Nautilus could do that in the mid-1950s, right? So, like, what in the actual was wargaming thinking adding a boat like this that just breaks the laws of physics? I could do a whole separate video where I just rant about 4501. But anyway, she came to the game for coal, of all things. They also introduced this salvage for victory thing. This was the first time they did this last year, right? You could cash in various currencies to earn rewards. You could cash in premium time, you could cash in coal, you could cash in steel if you wanted, doubloons, and they were rewarding sometimes really cool things, premium ships, unique ships you couldn't get other ways, that kind of stuff. This is the first time that they did it. This was kind of the test iteration. Later on, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes when we get to the 1211 patch in December, they actually added a unique ship that you could only get through one of these salvage things. A very odd collaboration, if you guys remember this, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, of all the games you could think of, did a collaboration with World of Warships. This was a really weird one. It had some kind of in-game thing. I don't know. This was a very odd one. I remember reading about this going, but why? And then, of course, because it was October, Halloween operations came back, right? And Halloween operations are some of the most fun things in boats. If you have not taken the time to play Halloween ops with your buddies, I cannot encourage you enough. When October rolls around, set up a night with some friends, get 5, 6, 7 of them together, whatever. Everybody grab something to drink, a nice adult beverage, and just go hang out and blow up boats for a while. The Halloween ops are a ton of fun. Moving into November, we got to 12.10. There were a lot of big changes to the commander skills in this patch. I had genuinely forgotten that some of this occurred. But at the same time, looking back over the patch notes, I feel like there was basically good changes here. Let me have a quick peek and refresh my memory. But it was, what have you got in here? We've got changes to consumable specialist, on the battleships, pretty much everything. Cooldown time of all. Yeah, so this was actually okay. They actually nerfed this one. This one got a small bit of a nerf. Preventative maintenance on the battleship and destroyer line actually got a bit of a buff. It made your secondaries and your AA mounts harder to kill. Super heavy AP for battleships came with a flooding and fire reduction. It's kind of a nice change. Repair party readiness in the battleship tree. Also came with the possibility of unlocking an additional repair party charge. Some nice things in there. Focus fire training for cruisers got better. This is a skill that I continue. Well, focus fire, I say for cruisers. It's in cruisers and battleships. It's in different places in the tree. This is a skill I continue to recommend because it buffs not only your anti-aircraft priority sector damage, it speeds up the cooldowns. It speeds up the your availability of your submarine anti-aircraft strikes, or submarine aircraft strikes, your aircraft depth charges. So if you don't like dealing with carriers and submarines, then for 2 points in cruisers or 3 points in battleships, you can literally pick up a skill that does both things, which is really, really sexy. Some other changes in here. This has also got the kind of the buff to dazzle where they added ship speed. They buffed the tier 4A defense skill that I like on Minotaur. A couple other odds and ends. I genuinely forgotten they'd done this, right? It's been that long. But some good changes in there. Japanese Battlecruiser Early Access continued through this patch. Asymmetric battles came back in this patch, which was nice. This is a concept that's a ton of fun, but it's gone through a lot of iterations over the years. We had some, of course, clan battles and brawls kicking off. High School Fleet, right? This is one of the original collaborations going all the way back to 2016, I think. It's come and gone over the years, and sure, here we are, 8 years into the game, and it came back into last year. A bunch of container changes. They've been doing a lot of policing of container contents. They've got so many kinds of containers at this point. They've been making an effort, I think, to partly kind of clean up and police the value of some of those containers in terms of what they're charging for them, their availability, and also keeping their contents relevant with the modern game. So it's a double-edged sword, right? You know that they're not changing the economic balance in our favor, but if the contents are still relevant, then it can be a worthwhile investment. This was something I completely missed. I was reading the patch notes and going, I've never heard of this ship. Some kind of Tier 9 Russian battleship that there was some kind of event for. And I was like, really? Okay, I've literally never played this boat. I didn't even know it existed. So new thing for me to do on stream, apparently. Whole bunch of buffs in this patch. On the back end, basically the bottom, 5 or 6 things here. The entire Pan-Asian cruiser line got buffed in some fashion or other. Usually main battery reload, main battery range, and the ballistics on the shells, which is good. These ships are not good cruisers. They really aren't. I haven't played them since this buff. That's kind of sad. Think about it, right? It's been like a year, and I haven't even touched a Pan-Asian cruiser in that long because they're just not that interesting to me. But I might, having read this and been like, oh, I didn't know they'd done that, I might actually have to go back and check these things out. Some other buffs in here, a little bit of buff to ZF6, a little bit of a buff to Tier 10 American cruiser USS Austin. Basically, this was a ship that I think they were very afraid of when it first came out. Understandably so. When you go back and you watch some of the cruiser savants, guys like Flambass crushing people with this ship, they've, I think, since gathered enough data to realize that, hey, not everybody is a cruiser savant, and so they buffed it a little bit here, which was nice to see. And then a little bit of buff there to Tashkent 39 on that torpedo reload. Moving into December, of course, we get all of the goodies that come with the holiday celebrations. It's December, so every ship you play now, the way of course they have it set up these days, just playing a ship and earning experience in that ship gets you some amount of coal and or steel, depending on the tier of the ship. That's usually the starting at tier 5 up to I think like tier 8, you get coal, and then like tier 9 and 10, you get steel, or you get tokens that you can then cash in for super containers or whatever. I don't know. It's a variety of things, but the bottom line is that every holiday, all you have to do is log in and play the game, and they just drown you in free stuff, which is always a lot of fun, right? Like, it's a great time of the year to log in and work on getting coal for a coal ship or a steel ship or something you've been chasing. Now, they brought that salvage for victory thing back. We talked about this earlier, right? They introduced it in October. It ran for a patch. That was kind of the test case. Here it is coming in like for the first big, like, let's go, reveal of it. And of course, Kitakami was at the top of the food chain. Now, it's interesting to me, right? Kitakami, of course, has a very tumultuous history in the game, let's say. And I remember when they finally announced she was finally going to come into the game, like, for good. This was an old ship that they had tested all the way back in like 2015, like one of the very first seasons of ranking out of in like the first 2 seasons of test seasons of ranked. When they were introducing that, you got to have Kitakami in your port for like a month. And at that era, the ship was a holy terror. Now, debatable. There are actually legitimately destroyers in this game that will eat Kitakami for lunch. So, yeah. I don't even own one of these. I didn't spend the money. I didn't think she was worth it. Now, the good news is that the Salvage for Victory thing had interim stages rewards. Like, Kitakami was the top end. But if you spent some, resources, again, premium time and coal or steel or whatever you want, research points, whatever you wanted to invest, there were some interim rewards that were quite good. And so some of those ships that you could pick up along the way in those middle tiers of working up this were a lot of fun. Things like Ellie and I think Francisco Ferruccio are on that list. And those are pretty good boats. Of course, you also had a dockyard event for tier 9 Italian cruiser Michelangelo, another ship that I'm not sure I've ever played, actually, now that I think about it. This is the odd one, I think. She's the one she's like a secondary cruiser, and both of the main battery turrets are midships. It's very awkward. I've run into these in game, and the SAP secondaries shred. Like, they hurt. But I don't think I've ever played one. Full release Japanese battle cruisers finally coming into the game out of early release. Airship escort going away out of random battles. This was an experiment they had tried for a while. Ultimately, I don't think anybody was sad to see this go. I think a lot of people like the airship escort format. I do. I think it's a fun game. It's a fun mode. The struggle I have with it is in randoms, sometimes you got to be playing the right ship to be relevant in an airship escort mode. And if you're not, well, guess what? Life just sucks for you. And that's never a good feeling. I said asymmetric battles return last patch. I kind of reiterated it here. They were in this patch as well. More testing, more asymmetric battles. Again, I like the concept. They're a lot of fun. They added Ruggiero Deloria for steel into the armory, tier 10 Italian premium battleship. This is a really fun boat, and it's one of the only ones out there with like really high caliber SAP. If memory serves, these are 18-inch SAP shells. I remember playing a couple of test games in this boat back then, and it's very odd. Like the performance of these shells is very strange depending on what you're shooting at and the angle and the range and everything. Like, there were times I'm thinking, oh yeah, big citadels, let's go. Nothing. They would just bounce. I'm like, what? So, and there were times it was like, what do you mean I citadeled him at that angle? It's a fun ship because it's different, right? I'll give it that. But it plays very, very oddly. I'll just in my mind. The tier 11 Italian battleship, Piemonte, the super ship in that tree added into the branch, and some small balance tweaks here. Renown getting a bit of a buff. Yudachi getting yet another buff, right? This time the one she desperately needed, which was to her torpedo speed. I need to go play the ship a little bit more now that they've buffed her torpedo speed, because her torpedo speed was always the big problem. Now that they've fixed that, the ship might actually be pretty solid. Marlborough, they improved her HE shell characteristics, more damage, more fire chance. A bit of a buff to Adriatico over in the Italian destroyer branch, main battery reload. Alvaro de Bazan, tier 10 Spanish destroyer, premium, got some buffs that it desperately needed. And then Bayern apparently had a weird thing with the way her fighters worked, that they wouldn't spot opposing planes as far out as they were supposed to. They called this a balance change. when I read the patch note, I thought, guys, that's a bug, isn't it? Like, you didn't design it that way intentionally. Did you? Like, maybe they did, but either way, it's been fixed, and Bayern's fighters now actually sort of work the way that everybody else's do, and kind of always should. Okay, so now to the part that everybody's actually really wants to be here for. Let's look at server populations. Again, I'm going to go through these, and at the end, I'm going to add a Twitch clip where I talk through kind of some of what we're seeing and why, and some of the reasoning behind that, and some of the frustrations that I have with some of the wargaming decisions that have been made over the years. So let's talk about NA. That's what I'm here for, right? I'm an NA guy. That's what we care about. And you can see here the server population has basically fell off a cliff in the second quarter of 23 and has basically not yet recovered. Fourth quarter is historically a good quarter, and I'll show you this in a later slide, right? Because of all of the aforementioned holiday stuff. Generally, October, November, not amazing. Lots going on. Halloween, Thanksgiving, a big North American holiday. Lots of people spend time away from their computers doing family stuff in these 3 months. But generally the holidays, certainly that week between Christmas and New Year's, you get a lot of people show up to log in. They've got time. They're away from work. They've got time off for Christmas or whatever, and they want their free stuff. And you can see here, this is quite literally the worst fourth quarter that Warships NA has ever had, right? Despite all of the free stuff. Never a good sign. Never a good sign. EU, not quite so bad. I don't think it's quite their worst fourth quarter, but it certainly isn't their best. I'd have to look here. I'm taking a glance. No, actually, it might be their worst fourth quarter. But again, you can see the recovery. This is the kind of recovery I would have expected to see on NA. This is historically typical. Usually second and third quarter population numbers are low. Fourth quarter population numbers come up because of all the aforementioned free goodies that Wargaming likes to hand out, right? So I was expecting to see this line here on NA. And hang on a minute, let me put the laser pointer in here so you can see that. Like that. There we go. So what I was expecting to see here was this line tick upwards, right? Back up to maybe 7,000, right? Maybe not quite this again, but 7,000? No. But on EU, it absolutely happened, right? It absolutely ticked back up the way you would have expected. Asia kind of going the other way. Now, historically, fourth quarter in Asia is not as amazing as it is on NA and EU. At the same time, this is a little disturbing. Again, we're still giving folks a bunch of free stuff. At the same time, this is also somewhat historical. Look at fourth quarter for the last few years, right? Fourth quarter 20, big drop. Fourth quarter 21, big drop. Fourth quarter 22, big drop, here to here, here to here. So fourth quarter historically on Asia doesn't perform the same way it does on NA and EU. If you play on Asia, I'm actually curious as to if you guys can help me understand why. I realize that the holidays are different on NA and EU than they are in Asia. So the holiday thing is probably not as relevant. But there's still a ton of free stuff, right? Like, because Wargaming is based in Europe, they still run their event calendar on that basis. So even though you're playing on the Asia server and maybe Christmas is not really your thing, there's still a ton of free stuff being given out, and yet fourth quarter historically not awesome in this region. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. If you play on Asia and you're watching this video, come into the comments. I'd love to know what you think. So, of course, this slide is nothing more than the conglomeration of all the slides we were just looking at, smashed into one screen, so you can kind of see the trend lines all together. Again, as we mentioned over the years, right, the EU and NA trend lines basically now kind of more or less horizontal, perhaps a small downward trend. Asia remains on the upward trend because they had that really strong COVID bump that they've managed to retain quite a few of those players, right? You go back, you look at 2017, 2018, Asia server population was not great. And then in the last couple of years, it has outpaced NA as an example. If you add all of those slides together, you get this slide. In other words, this is individual by server. This is totaling everything up. Not much to say here. You can see the small uptick. This is coming almost exclusively on the back of the uptick on EU. NA basically flat. Asia actually down. So arguably one of the least interesting, least appealing fourth quarter upticks that Wargaming has yet had, right? Sometimes that uptick doesn't happen until first quarter. It kind of depends on the timing of the event. You can kind of see it here in 18 into 19. You could see it here into 21 into 22. You could see it here into 17 into 18. But again, like going all the way back to 16, the big bump was in the fourth quarter here because of that was like the first year they did big holiday giveaways. This was like, I think this was Graf Spee was the original free ship you got, and then in 17 and 17 into 18 they did something similar, right? Not seeing those big bumps anymore. And then this is, of course, the historical fourth quarter performance, right? Fourth quarter 15, 16 quite solid. 17 a bit of a drop off, a bit of a recovery for the through COVID land, and of course now, as we mentioned earlier, the worst fourth quarter performance we've yet seen from a global perspective in World of Warships. Not terribly encouraging for the overall life and health of the game. I'm going to close here, as I've said a couple of times, with a clip from Twitch where I talk through some of just talking to my chat about some things and why I feel like some of these numbers are where they are and why they go this way. I won't say it's a condemnation of Wargaming. I think it's definitely me expressing some frustration on how they handle their player base and their approach to player retention. So let's just leave it at that. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Enjoy the clip. I'll catch you down in the comments, and we'll be back soon-ish with first quarter 24. We'll catch you later. Yeah, exactly my point, Hoosier.
To Jurassic.
Ace, Daniel, Eskris, I think I missed you guys. Thank you for the follows. Welcome in. But that's my point, Hoosier, right? And the community is reacting accordingly. A whole bunch of people closed their wallets years ago. A whole bunch of people have just quit playing the game, right? And so at the end of the day, the population dip, right? The visible population decline is in my opinion, it's a factor of two things. One, time, right? Some of it is simple time. The longer you play the same game over and over and over and over, the more your brain wants something different or something new, right? And at the end of the day, new ships don't really change the game, the fundamental game, do they? Right? New ships are fun. It's fun to have new things to play with, but at the end of the day, you're still playing the same game. I'm still taking a brand new destroyer and zoning into a domination game with a bunch of people who have no idea how to control the map, as an example, right? That's so the fundamental flaw of the game. Flaw is the wrong word. Maybe it is the right word. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to convey, right? The overall skill level of the, excuse me, hope that didn't sound too bad in the ear. The overall skill level of the player base being where it is does not change when I throw new content into the game. So, Fisher, thank you for the follow. So the frustration of zoning into a game and having a bunch of, DDs for teammates doesn't change because I'm driving a new ship. At the end of the day, I think you can only take that for so long, right? I think mentally that grind of, oh God, I'm wasting my time, just slowly wears you down to the point where you just eventually are like, I'm done. I can't anymore, right? Where we're talking about Happa, I've had nights like that. Happa's had days like that. You talk to guys that have been streaming this game. As positive as a dude as Zaf is, I guarantee you he's had days like that. His solution to streaming boats is that a lot of the time he spends online streaming, he's not actually playing. He's doing replay analysis, and he's very good at it, right? Not only is he very good at it, he's very insightful. He has great communication skills. And so, exactly, Hoosier, exactly what I'm talking about. I think if you stream boats for any length of time, eventually you're going to have that day. You're going to have that moment. And so the fundamental underlying problem is still there. No matter how many patches you get, no matter how many new ships you throw into the game, that is still there. So over time, in my opinion, the population decline makes sense. Wargaming has made a conscious choice to focus on bringing new players in, extracting money out of them, but not necessarily focusing on retaining them, right? It's so many of the decisions that have been made over the years make it very clear that retaining longtime veteran players is not on their radar. My suspicion is, Honey, 9 years. 9 years. My suspicion, I don't think they'll ever admit this. I don't think they'll ever say it out loud. My suspicion is the reason for that is they have curves and analysis in their fancy analytical departments that show over time, the longer someone plays a game, the game, the less they spend, the less they spend, the less they spend. So what they want to do is they want to bring in the new player who's they can likely get some money out of them rather than worry about retaining the player who's been here 5 years and is not likely to spend money. Here's the problem. Here's my problem with that philosophy. Okay. My problem with that philosophy is that I have played enough, I've been a member of enough gaming communities that my opinion is very different, because it's the veterans of a game that not only do some of your marketing for you, right, by talking the game up and getting people interested in it, they are also the most likely players to help explain and teach the mechanics of your game to those new players, right? So I see this all the time in tabletop communities, all the time in tabletop. Exactly, classic. And so, I'll give you a simple example, right? You guys know I just started playing a card game. Honey, I'll get to your question in a second. Just started playing a few months ago, new card game for Fantasy Flight called Star Wars Unlimited. I've been streaming it here on the channel a little bit. You can play that game digitally. You can play it on the tabletop. Great game. But I've been playing card games, collectible card games, on and off for 25 years. 25 years? Close to 30 years. Actually, I think this year is 30 years. So those communities in general are amazing, right? Because when somebody new discovers the game after it's 2 or 3 years old, the people that you've got somebody there who knows the game to welcome you in, hand you it, put a deck in your hand, and let you start and say, here, I'm going to teach you how to play, or I'm going to teach you how this deck works, or I'm going to hand you a pile of cards I don't need to help get you started. This is a very, very common phenomenon in tabletop gaming. In digital gaming, it's a little different because I can't give you things. I mean, I could gift you ships and stuff, but it's not like I can reach into a box and hand you ships that I'm not playing with. It doesn't work that way. But the mentality, though, is still there. It's, oh, you're a new player. Let's div up. Let's go hang out. Let's go work on a ship grind line. Let's go grind out a ship together. Let me introduce you to the mechanics of the game. Oh, here's why you can't spot that guy. Here's how AA works, right? All of these kinds of things. And it's people respond and learn better when they've got someone willing to bring them in and help explain all that stuff. Some people are naturally inclined to go to YouTube or Wikipedia or whatever, the World of Warships wiki, and try to learn this stuff on their own. But some people simply respond better. Some people learn better when there's a instructor to teach them. And so the veterans generally fill that role. And by driving away your veterans, I want to say driving away may be a little unfair, but no, I think it is fair. By pushing your veteran community away and demonstrating to them that you don't really have a vested interest in giving, in caring, you impact retaining the new players you do bring in. And that is where I think some of this downward spiral comes from. Personal opinion. So BMO, good point. That's a great point. It's what you're talking about is exactly the kind of thing. We did a speed run for charity, 4 or 5 of us back in late May, and we all created fresh accounts. And I was floored at how much free stuff they give you. You're playing your first 100 games. I'm just picking a number out of thin air, but your first 100 games, every game you're getting something free. You're unlocking something new, but eventually that well dries up. And now I think what the intention is, okay, they've got their hooks into you, and now you drop $10 on a month of premium, or you go buy 3,000 or 4,000 doubloons. Which, in fairness, for a free-to-play title, is exactly the way they should be monetizing it, right? They should get your interest. They have to get your interest without you spending anything, get you sucked in, and then get money out of you. So the business model makes sense. But my frustration is as a veteran player, it feels somewhat detrimental to the overall long-term health of the game by treating your new players as a piggy bank and your veterans as an inconvenience. Is probably the way I'd summarize it.